we're just going to be sitting.
And we're live every single time. Hey, Jesse. Hi, everyone. Super excited to have you here. I couldn't be more excited to have Jesse having a conversation with us today. Thanks, Jesse, for being here. We were actually just talking about how we're quite literally like a walk away from each other, but in separate rooms behind screens. But I can't wait to introduce Jesse if you don't know her. But first, I wanted to talk a little bit about Female Founder Collective, what we are, what we do, and of course, 10th House, our private membership community. But for you all who are not familiar, Female Founder Collective is a platform for empowering women both socially and economically. And what we do is we actually issue grants to female founders all around the globe. And we introduced 10th House as our new private membership community that provides connections, education, resources, tools for founders everywhere. That also includes being able to find founders by stage, by industry, by geography, on whether or not they've recently raised venture capital so that you can find them and ask questions and find that CRM tool that's perfect for your business, or you're able to find the perfect investor for your most recent round. And we also have, I would say, probably around 20 to 25 different corporate partners that provide incredible benefits and price points so that the price of our membership is worth its weight in gold. So definitely check it out and see if you're eligible. But without further ado, super excited to introduce Jesse Draper, who is the founding partner of Halogen Ventures and is a creator and host of Emmy-nominated television series, The Valley Girl Show. She is a fourth-generation venture capitalist focused on early-stage investing in female-founded consumer technology. And among her 50, now you have a lot more than 50 portfolio companies.
I do. This must be, 70. We have about 70.
70. Yeah, I was going to say, I was like, I think there's a lot more than that, but they include Skim, Carbon 38, Hop Skip Drive, the Flex Company, Eloquy, This Is Elle, which recently... Eloquy and This Is Elle recently sold. So those were great exits for her. She stars on Set's television series Meet the Drapers currently in its second season, or maybe that wasn't currently. She's listed as Marie Claire magazine as one of the 50 most connected women in America. And she's a contributor to Marie Claire, Mashable, Forbes, is a regular investor and tech personality on shows including TLC's Girl Starter, The Katie Couric Show, Fox's Good Day LA, CNBC's Who Wants to Be the Next Millionaire Inventor, and Freeform's Startup U. She sits on the board of directors of enterprise technology company Carbon 38, Trust and Will, Prima Donna, Style Row, and on the nonprofit board BizWorld. She supports Parkinson's Institute and is very involved in growing UCLA's female entrepreneurship community, as well as working with FFC. So thank you so much for being here. I feel like there's like a million more things that we could say about your illustrious career, but I want to get into you and talking a bit about Halogen, why you started it, and really why you have the investment strategy that you do.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me. I am a huge fan of Female Founders Collective and the 10th House, both because I actually have found investments through you guys, and I think it's such a unique female-focused community, and it's so important. So everyone get involved, whoever's listening. But yeah, so I run Halogen Ventures. We invest in early-stage female-founded consumer technology. So there has to be a woman in the founding team. We say of 5. As Ali kindly mentioned, I have about 70 portfolio companies, sit on quite a few boards, and we invest in anything that kind of like touches the consumer in some way. So about 25% CPG products, and then the rest are pure technology products. And I started this because I grew up in Silicon Valley, and I'm the oldest of 4 kids, and I'm a fourth generation venture capitalist, as I think you mentioned, and I'm the first female in line. And for me, being a woman, I never saw women doing these things and being investors, even though that's truly the business that I knew. I, worked at startups growing up, and I just understood entrepreneurs from the age of about 8. And I just kept thinking, okay, well, that's not what women do, though. I would go with my dad to work, I would go to conferences with him, and I only saw men. And it was a real eye opening moment for me when I realized, okay, well, my mom stays at home, takes care of 4 children, which, by the way, is the hardest job. That is the
Way
hardest
harder,
job,
right?
way harder. And my aunt was an actress, and so I actually said, "Oh, well, that's what women do." Like as an 8-year-old, they say you can be what you can see, and I could see her as a successful actress. And so I went into entertainment, had some success there, but I was sort of like gung ho, like entertainment. Um, Ultimately, in about 2008, I started. I was on a Nickelodeon show. I did all these movies, and in about 2008, I was auditioning and just feeling really like icky about auditioning. I had this one audition that was just terrible and made me feel just like not human. And that same week, I was invited to the first Twitter conference, and it was at the Skirball Center in LA. And I went and I sort of looked around and I was like, okay, there's a few more girls here than usual, but I feel like oddly comfortable with men in suits. And I feel like something's changing and I want to be a part of this new kind of technology, social media world. That got my wheels turning. And I was like, I don't want to be an actress anymore, but I want to take this entertainment background and turn it into something different. So I was an entrepreneur. I took this idea of creating the first technology talk show. Now there's quite a few, but truly it was the first because I had like the former CEO of Google, Eric Schmidt, on, and nobody cared, and people would kill for him today.
Can you
I
imagine?
created I created this great tech talk show, acquired some other technology news blogs, and we were building a sort of Business Insider-y type technology blog. And through that, I started interviewing more men. I was interviewing men in technology. And so I made an initiative to interview 50% women because I just felt like I need to change this. I'm actually like not helping this problem that I saw growing up. And so I interviewed 50% women, one of whom was Rebecca Minkoff, who is one of your co-founders. And that really was an incredible experience for me because I realized there's so many women. There's so many women starting companies. There's no pipeline problem at all. I had created this Batwoman signal and was just being inundated. I mean, it's probably similar to you guys. Like there are thousands of women starting companies all the time. You just have to
More
find
than
them and
men,
kind of
by the way.
what?
More than men. More women are
More
starting.
than men. I mean, truly. And so I started getting pitched these deals. Sometimes I'd say, you're a little early for the show, love what you're doing. Can I write you a tiny check? And so I started writing these little checks, created a nice portfolio because I realized that I could help facilitate this problem or like fix this problem in 2 ways. One, by giving women in tech media exposure, and two, by funding them or figuring out how to get them funded. And so some of those deals ended up doing really well for me. I came to a moment with the show where we were nominated for an Emmy, and I just feel a conversation for another day, but the media industry was completely broken at that moment. And I think we're catching up. It's almost sort of getting solved, but it was very, very broken. And so I thought, okay, well, I have this nice little portfolio. My deals are doing really well. Maybe I can go out and raise a fund. And I went out and I pitched, maybe 500 potential investors, closed 50 of them. And now we're, well past our second fund and we have 70 companies. And anyway, very long, convoluted story, but not your typical investor journey.
I actually didn't even know that story. So I love getting the chance to hear that. It's super interesting because it's like you did get exposure to these incredible women. And just sort of talking about the there's not a pipeline problem. Why do you think it is that even though there's not a pipeline problem, women are getting such a minority of the dollars coming from venture? And I think it went down last year, right? Like to 2.5%. versus it had gone up to almost 3% of venture dollars were being given to female founded businesses. Now we're at about 2.5. Why do you think that is? And what do you think we can do as investors, as business people, as people in the media, and that have the opportunity to give exposure to women? What do you think would help?
So I'm actually going to flip that question on its head, because as we've established, you and I, and so many others working towards this problem, there's no pipeline problem. It's a money problem, and it's a funding problem for women that actually starts at the top. We're actually making change at the bottom. And the coolest thing about investing in women is, because I said, hey, we're looking for women, and we got all these deals kind of coming in. We have a really interesting diaspora of, we have over 50% minority-led companies. We think about diversity of age, race, and gender. And when you pick one form of diversity and focus on that, diversity breeds success, and it all comes together. And I think we've been operating out of this, for lack of a better term, man's world for hundreds of years. And so we have to kind of change that. Something that I've come across recently is, as a fund manager, I have to fundraise as well. And in order for us to continue funding these incredible companies, we have to go to the endowments and institutions and these larger opportunities for funding. I was recently at the Women's PE Summit, and it had 600 women who are in private equity, and it gave me some hope, but it also was very discouraging, because I felt like it was women operating in a man's world versus women, like the VC women are kind of seeing the change. And I think we still need it to bubble up, because we need billions of dollars, not millions of dollars. We actually need trillions of dollars, not billions of dollars. And by the way, investing in women is a multi-trillion-dollar opportunity. But I think there's something that's broken at the top. So I'm probably going to alienate like a million investors for my next fund by saying this, but there's 20 advisors. And these are like, think about like a private wealth manager, someone who advises you on your capital. But there's like about 20 major advisors who manage the biggest endowments and institutions in the world. So that means 20 companies make the decision for billions and billions of dollars and where it's going. And I've recently come up with this idea, and I hope everyone comes after me and pokes holes in it, because I know this is a half-baked idea that I've decided to talk about on this LinkedIn Live. But if we broke that and said, hey, anyone managing over $4 billion or $2 billion or $1 billion, because if you're managing $1 billion, you have enough capital to hire your own in-house person who's making the investment decisions, instead of the 20 companies making this, all of these 20 companies deploying the same capital to the same funds over and over. If we broke that, because all these 20 advisors, each client is like, it's ranges from 5 billion to 100 billion in terms of kind of the client's size and what they're investing on behalf of the client. So if you broke that up, you'd have more minds making these decisions, and people would create different networks. But I think the problem lies at the top, because now, having met with so many of these pension funds and institutions and endowments, it's broken. Everybody looks the same. They're all much older. They all say the exact same thing over and over. Well, if you're not Sequoia, why would I invest in you? I'm like, well, I'm an emerging manager. So why, like, Sequoia is managing billions and billions of dollars. Like, we're early stage investors. How are you going to find the next Sequoia if you're not willing to disrupt the system and find some new talent? And I think the most frustrating thing as a woman is, I have an incredible track record. Like, I've sold a company to Twitter. I've sold a company to P&G. I've sold a company to Walmart. It's weird when I say I did it, the founder did it, but I worked with them. And, and they deserve all the credit. But I feel like that's the most frustrating thing, is they're investing in these old boys networks over and over and over. And I love men. We need men. I get such silly questions. Like, people say, what if? a man works at the company that you're investing in. I'm like, well, we're
Great.
building billion-dollar businesses. So I'm hoping
Pretty sure they're going to have some
I want thousands working there eventually. But I want just as many women, if not more. So I think that's, I think it's just broken at the top right now.
Right, right. Well, I think it's a super interesting insight that I think not a lot of us are privy to. And in particular for female founders, I think a lot of times I'll hear female founders say, well, I'm only getting men that are actually investing in my company, even though I'm talking to a lot of female investors, like they're the last ones to pull the trigger. But I think it's because of the things that you're up against, as you mentioned, that as a fund manager, you also have to show a certain level of performance. And if you don't show that, then your investors aren't going to come back, your fund's not going to grow, and you're not going to be able to keep sort of feeding and investing in all of these female founders. So I think it's a really interesting insight that we also have to remember as founders coming and asking people like you for money, that you're up against a number of things too, and to equip you as best possible to really sort of prove out these investments. So the other question I had for you, Jesse, was like, I think from a women's perspective and as a female founder, I'd be interested to see across your investments what you've seen are the sort of traits and characteristics that women have that have made them successful as a woman. And really then on the flip side of that, what are some of the things that you've seen in the process of women coming to pitch you that you feel like potentially hold them back?
Such good questions. Yeah, I'm always analyzing with our founders, what are those character traits that I'm looking for and what's worked for us. And I think ultimately it's like the heads down founder who cares about the work and just gets the work done. I found actually they're not always the best communicator. And they're like, I always think about Talia from This Is Elle. And I remember calling her and being like, what's going on? I haven't heard from you in months. Like, what's going on? She's like, oh, like we're doing 50 million in revenue. Things are going well. We just launched in Whole Foods. And I'm like, never mind. I won't call you anymore. You call me like when you need me. And she sold her company, I think like 6 months later. And I think she was always sort of heads down, working really hard, focused on the work. And so when I think about the characteristics, like Lauren from the Flex company is really good about that too, like heads down, just working all the time. And they don't need to be the star. I've had it twice. I call it like the egomaniac gene, where they need to be out and they're like, oh, I'm getting a lot of sort of popularity because I'm running this company and the company is going well. And then they forget to run the business. And so it's good if you have a star, but make sure you hire a new CEO if you have a star. So that's a concern for me in terms of something that turns me off. And sometimes that happens after you invest, which is a problem because money changes people. It's interesting. So as founders out there, remember to focus on the work. But also, I think the things that turn me off in initial meetings are, I'm always like, okay, I want like two things that I'm very focused on. One, are you seeing the bigger picture here? Or are you just focused in your box? Like say you're creating an e-commerce fashion line. Is it going to be a marketplace? You're selling one thing? It's going really well. What are your next products? What's the 5-year roadmap? How is this going to be a multi-billion-dollar business in the next 5 to 10 years? I want to make sure that you're seeing the big picture and not just the one product that you're creating. I think often founders get excited about that first product, and then I'll ask a whole bunch of questions that sort of evoke answers that will show me whether or not they're seeing other opportunities within what they're building. Because that type of business, if you're selling one product, that may not be a VC fundable business, because I need to make sure you're going after the $1 billion market. Another thing is when I meet with a founder and I say, well, what if we had an international pandemic and all of the manufacturers you were working with shut down. And, or I remember I asked Brooke from Good Milk and I said, well, what if we ran out of almonds? Because she runs like an almond milk company. She's like, well, I don't think that's going to happen. I'm like, but what if it did? And you just want to know that they're going to roll with it. And she's like, well, we have other products in mind. I mean, we can just kind of focus on the other products and our oat milk or whatever it is. And I think you need to know that they're thinking in a way that can evolve. If you're an entrepreneur and you're focused on one thing and you don't see that it may not work or how you can evolve to solve this problem. Like, I mean, COVID's been the best example.
Like plan B.
Yeah. Plan B, plan C, plan D.
Yeah.
COVID's been the best example for our founders of this, where, they all had to, within a week or two, had to kind of, I saw whole business models moved online, new product launches. Like they just had to figure out how to keep up the revenue and try something new. And I have to say, investing in women, they always have a plan B and a plan C and a plan D, much more so, I think, than men, which is why we need men and we need women.
Yep. They work in the ecosystem together. That's actually, that's something that I found as well, is that women in particular are more conservative in their planning styles. And therefore they do sort of map to, worst case scenarios if they need them. And then they're prepared. Right. And they manage their budgets really well.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Which is amazing.
Yeah. We have one company that's raised like $1.3 million and she's doing 20 million and may never need to raise again. And I just don't hear that often from men, that they raise like this tiny amount. They're always sort of raising and raising and raising and think, oh, well, we just need to raise more. We need to raise more. And women are more profitable. They raise half as much money for many reasons that are beyond purposeful, but they raise half as much money and they make it go twice as far. So it's a real opportunity, I think. And yeah, I mean, I think I have so many women come to me, though. The problem with them raising less sometimes is they'll say, I'm raising $500,000. And I'm like, okay, let's raise 2 million because we don't know what's going to happen. And you need at least 2 million to do anything. Or I'll have a hardware company come to me and say, I'm raising $1 million. I'm like, let's raise 5 because it's hardware. Yeah. There's research and development and hardware is hard. And I think I would say, if you're a female founder, go out there and ask for more, or, plan to be oversubscribed, or it's all a game. I mean, people just say, oh, I'm raising $1 million. And then in their head, they're really raising 4. And they're like, oh, I guess we could keep taking money. And it's like such a game.
It is smart strategy there, though.
Yeah.
Like we're oversubscribed. And then all of a sudden everybody sort of rushes in on the round. So people listening, this is a good way to get people excited and urgent about investing in you. What about in the pitch process, Jesse? Like, what are some of the things that you've seen? And I guess you don't see a lot of men pitching except for sort of early days.
I do, because like men work at the companies. I sit on the board of one of our, we have 3 male CEOs, so we don't discriminate for any of you out there watching. We also love men, but we have 70 companies, so that's how many female CEOs we have. I sit on one of the, we have a lot of men, but and we have a lot of men come pitch with a female co-founder.
Yeah,
and I see drastic differences.
Yeah,
I'll have a guy come in and he'll say, "Oh yeah, we don't have a product yet. We're raising 25 million for this. I mean, we're raising at a $25 million valuation for this skincare company." So in my head, I'm like, okay, risk, no product yet, which means they have to go through R&D, and they're raising, like $10 million or something. And it's gutsy. Like, he doesn't have a product. I don't know what they're raising based upon. Sometimes they don't even like, I've had guys not even come in with a deck.
Yeah.
And they're just like, well, we're proven founders. So like, we didn't really need to put a deck together. I'm like, okay. And then I'll have the exact same company come, and it'll be a female CEO, and she'll come and she'll say, and she'll be apologizing. I'm so sorry. Like, so we're raising at an $8 million valuation and we're doing 4 million of revenue. And it's a skincare company and we've never raised any money. And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, 4 million in revenue, a multiple on revenue in skincare or in beauty is, could be anywhere from, 5 to 12x. And I'm like, okay, so this is a really fair / I feel like I'm getting a steal
Right.
deal. And I'm like, why are you apologizing? You're trying to convince me not to invest in this company.
Yeah.
And this guy just came in and he didn't have anything. And like he
Right.
raised at a significantly higher valuation. And as an investor, I'm always trying to push your valuation down. But in those situations, sometimes you're like, I feel like I'm a criminal if I'm
Right.
pushing.
Kind of
I feel like I should be like,
on.
just a tip. You should probably push it up a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think women often are apologizing or just catch yourself if you're trying to tell investors about all of the issues that they might see. Don't tell me about the issues. Tell me about all the things that could go right, because I need to see that you're an insane optimist, like literally crazily optimistic. If you give me one inkling of negativity or concern, I'm probably out, truly, because it's like I have an hour with you or 30 minutes or whatever it is. And I'm like, you just made me worry about this. Or as an investor, I'm going to dig in more. If you say like, yeah, I mean, there was like this manufacturing thing, but it's fine. So we're doing this. And then I'm like, well, what manufacturing thing? What are you talking about? And then we dig in, then it goes on this dark rabbit hole. And you're like, okay, this seems too complicated. It was a lot messier than I thought. Or like, but I think even if your company's a little dirty, messy, and ugly, as they often are in the earliest stages, if you are insanely optimistic and you come in and show me what could go right and how you can solve all those problems and don't even let me look down, then I usually will invest. I'm very, very excited about optimistic entrepreneurs because it's going to be hard. So you need to be super positive.
It's interesting, Jesse, because you also had a conversation about transparency, and just having founders really be authentic about what's really going on in their business. And I do think there's a fine line there, right? Where, I think women tend to be very transparent on the whole, right? And that's sort of what you're seeing in those meetings. But when you're having an initial pitch meeting, you don't want to see somebody who is, like you said, potentially even like pessimistic, right? Like you want to be dazzled. You want to you want to hear the story. You want to feel like this founder is going to run through walls. And I've seen that as well with women pitching. There's sort of a level of confidence that's lacking that a lot of times men will come in and just be almost like you said, really gutsy, really bold. So can you talk about finding that line? And sorry for the computer messages.
Okay. I was like, is that me? I think you should always be transparent as an entrepreneur. I want to know I can trust you. And recently I've been thinking a lot about trust because I sit on one board and my team was asking, I sit on a couple, but I was comparing boards and my team was asking me a lot of questions around like, why do you feel weird on this one board? And I said, I think it's because I thought I could trust the founder. And it's not like they're doing anything illegal. It's like, but they told me they were going to do this much revenue and then they didn't. And then they told me they had this much cash in the bank and they didn't. And then they told me that they were going to launch this product line or whatever it was. And then they didn't. And so I've realized I can't count on them to do what they said they were going to do. But while my other founders say, this is what happened, this is how much revenue we're going to do, and this is how much we did. Or if they didn't do it, they'd say, this is why. And trust is such an important thing. And as an investor, you have to really feel like you can trust them. And establishing trust is all about being transparent and sharing what's going on. And yeah, we have a credit line. We have about $3 million of debt. And that is, what you should probably know. Like be upfront about the fact that you have debt. And that's an incredibly important thing to share with an investor because it makes them look at the investment in a different way. But also, if you are in an inventory related business, it's pretty normal to have debt. So just make sure you're upfront with those things because that establishes trust. And sometimes I also say no to, I'll pass on a deal and I'll say, it's a little early. And sometimes a little early to me means like, keep coming back because I haven't established that trust yet. And so if you keep updating me every quarter, every 6 months and say, hey, look, we did what we said we were going to do. I have invested so many times late in those cases where I'm like, oh man, I should have gotten in early. They did what they said they're going to do, but I needed to kind of watch it for 6 months or a year.
And a quick plug, we actually have a partnership with a company called Angelspan. And this is a great thing for you all to know about for your portfolio companies, where they do investor updates for you, and they can do it monthly, they can do it quarterly, and they basically spend time with the founder and cull together the most appropriate information based off data, yield this amazing template to send out to investors, which is also good for securing investment, right? For people who send you like, here's what's going on with my company. Here are the milestones that I've reached. Here are my sales numbers. Here's a great PO that I'm working on securing, whatever it is. Like that's an amazing way to sort of to keep in touch in a valuable way with somebody like you. But because we're coming up on time, I wanted to ask you sort of as a final note, like what as women we can do, sort of learning from taking a page from men's books to really sort of come together and advance ourselves forward. And then please tell everybody where to find you.
I am very easy to find. I think as an investor, you have to be super accessible. So I'm on LinkedIn here, Jesse Draper, on Instagram, Jesse C. Draper. And then you can even go to halogenvc.com and we have a cold pitch form. I'm on Twitter. I'm very accessible. And then in terms of what we need to do to move women forward, I think today, I'm very focused on childcare. We are in a major crisis that we have been for 100 years. And I think as women, we need solutions for this. So I would say, come with ideas for maternity leave policies and for benefits involving childcare and, government paid leave. I think we need to solve this problem. Childcare is unaffordable. And if we can solve foster care and childcare, we get 50% of the homeless off of the streets, which helps with incarceration, which basically solves the world's problems. So I think it's all connected. Yeah. So I'd say just come with solutions for childcare. We are in a crisis. I have had so many colleagues say, oh yeah, childcare, it's like such a hot topic right now. It's such a trend. I'm like, it's a crisis. Like, it's not a trend. Like, this is a problem.
It's like a trend. Childcare.
Yeah. And by the way, we need dads too, dads, moms, like we need help. I think we're all like, Allie and I both have 3 kids and we're juggling it all. And I'm exhausted every day. And we're like, I don't know, how we can continue this way with unaffordable childcare. So we have great companies working on it. We're always looking for more in this space. We're investors in We Care. We're investors in a company called Binti that's solving foster care with technology. And we are really looking for solutions in this space because it is also a $1 trillion market. So real opportunity. We need more women to invest in this space, and we need more women to create solutions in this space.
I love that. Thank you so much, Jesse, for doing all that you do for all of us.
Thank you
for this information. I mean, it's invaluable and it's always a pleasure. And I feel like we could go on for days and days. And by the way, Jesse and I are going to buy an island and make it a space for women. So
we're buying a girl island. It's like a girl, because we need our equivalent of the golf trips. And so if anyone wants to invest in the girl island, we're going to do a lot of great things there.
That's what they call the girl island.
The girl island.
All right. Bye, everyone. Thanks so much for being here.